Check. Oh, so I heard the music, Ray, in the backstage. I can't still hear you. Let me see if I can hear you on YouTube. Talk on YouTube, Ray. Yep, I can't hear you on YouTube either. Can you take away that live chat thing in the screen? It's really distracting on our video, if it's possible. There we go. Yeah, I still can't hear you in YouTube. Can anybody who's here hear him?
Hello, 1 2 1 2 1
Oh,
2.
I hear you there.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
Yeah. 1
Oh,
2
I
1
hear
2.
you now.
Oh,
Hey, whatever you did, it works.
well, I changed the setting to a microphone, which is not the microphone I've selected. So
Ah,
um, I need to look into that. It might be. Can you hear me now? Okay.
I can hear you. So you're using your computer microphone.
Yeah. So it's
Ah,
something to do with this mic here.
okay.
I don't know what, and that's the first time that's happened.
That's a bummer.
Oh well. Well, as long
Well,
as you can hear me,
you
okay.
still sound pretty decent, so not
Okay.
bad.
All
Yeah,
right. That's good news. That's good news.
yeah.
All right. First hiccup, but solved. So welcome anyway. So this is our first kind of stream together. So this is going to be an exciting time. So for everyone watching, welcome. This is Ray for Truth Ministries, and as I would put it, a special guest. We have Kelly Powers of Berean Perspective Apologetics from Canada. So welcome, Kelly. Uh,
Thank you.
a Christian that's been a Christian for a very long time and has been doing this also for quite a while. He has his own stream and has put out a lot of information through his streams, both in terms of defending Christianity and also in terms of challenging various other worldviews. And tonight we're going to have one of those worldviews that we're going to look at. It's going to be a part series, I think, in terms of covering the basic premise of can atheism basically prove true in that it can prove that there is no God and we have somehow come into existence without a God, in effect. We're going to cover it in three stages. The one is kind of going to be tonight or today, depending where you are in the world, is going to just cover it from looking at the sort of science, if you like, and just looking at material aspects of the universe to see if that can give us evidence of whether there is a God or not. The second one is going to be on morality, to look at the whole moral argument and whether the atheist view from a moral argument can hold water, or whether the Christian view that there is a God makes more sense from a moral perspective. And then lastly, we're going to look at on another session. A third one will be on the whole aspect of Jesus, because if Jesus died and was resurrected, then the whole logic and case for Christianity, and therefore the case for God, becomes a much stronger one. Because if Jesus did die and was resurrected, then that does change things dramatically. Certainly from an atheist point of view, because they have to then explain that one away, and I think they're going to struggle. So welcome everyone. We've got some slides as well. It's going to be a pretty open discussion. I will put the link on the chat, so those that do want to join, any atheists out there want to join, you're welcome to do so. So those who may have seen the YouTube thumbnail that was scheduled a few days back for today, you might already be planning to come along and put your case. We would love to hear you atheists out there to see what you think and why you believe your position that there's no God and that somehow we just come from a kind of non-intelligent source, if you like. I think that's the main premise of an atheist, is that there is no intelligent source, which we call God, that started everything. The very beginning of all things, the universe, etc., simply came from either nothing or something that was without intelligence. Um, so, uh,
What's that?
no, sorry, I just heard a bit of background noise. It's okay, no problems. So hopefully I am sounding okay. I am not using my main mic for some reason. It's given me some difficulty, and I have no idea why because I haven't changed anything. But I'll have to test that another time. In the meantime, hopefully I can be heard okay. And Kelly, um, your mic and your output should be okay as well, hopefully, and we can be heard loud and clear.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question, Kelly, to start off the ball rolling. And this is us both going back a few years. Do you remember when you were back in school? What was the science teacher trying to kind of tell you and convince you in the how the whole universe began? Can you remember that far back?
Wow. I'm losing my memory as I get older here. Uh, 54. So I was in high school back in the 80s,
Hmm.
87 to 90s when I was. Yeah, if I can remember back with biology and that kind of stuff, science. I mean, basically, it's the same as it probably would be today, but probably more push today, probably. But the push was, of course, that evolution, um, goo to you, um, Big Bang. Uh,
Hmm.
been here for 13 something. The numbers change here and there, billion something years. Origin of man. You look at these different things, and so yeah, there's a lot of what people are being spoon fed or taught in schools nowadays, but hasn't been always the consistent consensus of the origins of life. It really has kind of come into that particular view the last 100 to 200 years. But, you know, and this is, my field with Berean perspective, being a Christian for many, many years, deals a lot with non-Christian cults and religions. I don't have as much interaction with people who are evolutionists, but in my experiences, a lot of times talking with them as well, and the different teachings is there's multiple theories, right? But the main one that they would probably all agree on that there's no creator, right? There's multiple theories of how we came into existence, um, lots of experiments, and even when you even look at some of the stuff in the past of experiments, they took intelligence to put these kind of examples, experiments together with information and models and labs and putting all these things together to try to create what we call life. It wasn't just random, it wasn't sporadic, it didn't just poof happen, out of nowhere, like the Big Bang. And so these things that we believe and taught to believe in school, at best, they're just theories. None of us were there billions and whatever years ago. And you look at the evidence today, there's a lot of, again, this is not directly my field, but there's a lot of people who are very intelligent, Christian creationists, intelligent design, people who believe in some type of, how God or how mankind and the world and universe has been made. Many people would point to a creator God, but when you look at school, um, they spoon fed us from a young age that we just evolved over time, and somehow non-living matter became life, biogenesis. It kind of goes against the second thermodynamic law that, in order to have an effect, you got to have a cause, right? Well, what was the cause? And,
Hmm.
with us, we at least have a good consensus that there's a designer, there's a creator. That's what the origin, and you talked early on about Jesus Christ. I mean, this is, I think, the one of the best evidences for the faith of this world is pointing to the history of Jesus Christ. But I think I've kind of went a little bit farther what you're asking, but that's some of
So
the response. So yeah, that's why I'm called the Sermon. So I keep on
yeah,
going.
that's fine. Well, I welcome that. It gives me a break as well while I'm thinking about what to say next. So thank you for your input. For me, it was very similar, and I thought one of the things I wanted to. I'm not going to repeat what you said, Kelly, because it was pretty much the same for what I was taught as well back in the day. But what I liked a bit, I want to just highlight is the fact you said theory. Now, this is where it's interesting because the way my teacher explained it, even though you put him into a corner, he would say, "Well, yes, it's a theory." But the way he teaches it, he's trying to almost say it's a fact. And if you
Right,
think about it,
right.
they
My
really
bad.
try and
Sorry. One. Yeah, you're right. When they would teach it, sorry, Ray, you're right. When they
mm,
would teach it, they taught it as fact,
yeah.
but really it was theory. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
But but yes, so but when when you put them in a corner, they will admit that. But this is the problem: the science and those behind it, especially those that believe there is no God, will always try and say it's a fact until they're pushed, until they're challenged by the right people, people with knowledge, people that are even scientists that are Christians, of course, that are believers in God. There are scientists that are Christians, of course, and they say, well, wait a minute, you can't tell me that's a fact unless you can show the evidence that it is a fact. And that's when, okay, you're right, it's a theory based on what? And this is where it gets interesting because if it's a theory, it's got to be based on a level of faith in that theory, that you believe in it based on the evidence. And that was convincing enough for you to believe it is true without being knowing it's true for certain. And to be honest, that's no different than us Christians because we have a faith because we can't prove in front of an audience 100% how the universe was made and so forth. We can't do that, but it is based on a faith basis. But what we're saying is the case for God is much stronger when you look at the evidence. And that should lead you to then, if you're happy to be convinced on something based on how convincing it is, then why can't you at least consider God if it's more convincing? So that's where I'm going to angle this, if you like, to try and prove that the argument for God is more convincing than the argument that the universe came about without a God, without a intelligent source that we call God. So I've got a little slide I'm going to put together, but before I do that, I want to quickly show you a couple of very important scriptures to kickstart this. So if I share my screen, okay, here we go. So we just quickly look at this one. So this is Hebrews 11:6. But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that his rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So God is himself saying there has got to be a level of faith, but there will be a reward for those who will seek him. So there will be evidence, if you like, that God will provide if you at least make the effort to seek him. And then Romans 1, verse 20, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even the eternal power and Godhead, so that we are without excuse. So God is really putting a gambit out here. He's not holding back. He's saying, as much as it is a faith thing, I am going to uh, convince you, I'm going to tell you up front that I am going to prove to you, for those who seek me, the evidence to prove I exist. So he's putting that out there, which is what you would like to expect if there was a God, to at least be open and confident that for those that will seek him, will provide the evidence. So I thought those were a couple of nice scriptures to bear in mind that from God's position, he's being open and honest, is that it's not like he's laid it out in such a way that it's absolute 100% clear cut evidence, but the evidence is strong enough for those who really seek him will find him and will be convinced that he exists and that he is eternal and he has this power and so on. So That for me is a great way. I think God has put the challenge out there to kind of show His cards that for those who really want to seek Him, they will get answers. So He's not trying to play the game where, well, it's just too complex. I'm just going to hide. You can't really prove to me. You're going to just have to believe without any real evidence. No, He's telling us straight. He's putting those cards out there to say that there is the evidence out there. If there isn't the evidence out there, then of course my claim is false and God doesn't exist. So that's for me, I think, is a very positive way that God is declaring Himself, because He's not holding back to say, "Well, I have got the evidence. You go and seek it. You will find it." So that's what we're going to look at uh, in these episodes. So today it's going to be more around the science, if you like, of the universe that we're going to start to look at. Kelly mentioned there in his points he's made about school that some of that was trying to explain the science of the universe from a non Christian, if you say non God believer, that tends to follow the evolutionary path. Um, what are your thoughts, Kelly, and the atheist position, how they kind of position themselves?
Well, like you brought up a moment ago with Romans, um, we look throughout history, and of course, there would have been people who would have been rejectors of God even before what we would read in Romans here with the Apostle Paul, who was an apostle of Jesus Christ in the first century. But we look at Scripture, in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. We would see Psalms 19, the heavens declare the glory, of God. We can see like this masterpiece of, we look at space and the sun, the stars, everything's perfectly aligned in their spots. The sun is a perfectly alignment with Earth, same thing with the moon. Everything lines up properly. When we look at mankind, you look at animals, you look at birds, you look at dogs, cats, you look at humans. You look at us and we're different kinds, right? Like dogs are not cats, cats are not dogs, humans are not dogs, humans are not fish. We see different kinds. We see this picture, if you will, this beautiful artwork, and it's been laid out there. And when you look at what you just quoted a minute ago, Romans 1, I have it on my screen, I'm just gonna quote it. It says, "For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his internal power, divine nature, have been clearly seen through what's been made, or without
Mm,
use." But it goes on to say, even though they knew God, meaning they knew about God and his existence, they didn't honor him as God or give thanks, but became futile in their speculations. Their heart became darkened. Professing to be wise became fools and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible man, birds, or four-footed animals. And so people started, back in those days, and even before Paul, would have started worshiping, creation, things of creation rather than the creator. And we see this development over the last, like we talked about now,
mm,
uh, last couple 100 years, this big push, uh, you know, for atheism or non-existence in God, especially in the schools. And it's man in rebellion to the vast artwork that you could see of the universe and the sky and everything else perfectly aligned, how we are, how creation is, and everything has like a blueprint. And we look at our blood, our DNA,
mm,
the way that we're made up. I mean, everything has design. And to to really reject that, you really have to reject, I believe, the obvious, because it's just obvious, right? Now, when you get into the issue of science and the issue of evolution versus creationism, there's smart people on both sides of the coin, but we still have all the same evidence. The problem here is what people come down to their conclusions, and it goes back to what we talked about a moment ago, is theories. You see within, and again, this is again not my field, but at least I have enough knowledge to have a general conversation with most people. When you look at the consensus of people who would be atheists or even
mm,
evolutionists, if you will, the automatic starting point is there's no God, there's no creator, right? Well, what basis of evidence do we have for that, right? Look at what's around us. They always want to say to you, prove God exists. Well, I'd say, well, look at the evidence around us. There's design, there's history, there's how we have breath, how we have water, how we see vast things multiply. You don't see a cow producing a horse. You don't see gorillas turning into men, contrary to what
Thank
people want
goodness.
to claim, right? We don't, now, once in a while, I do crave a banana. I do like bananas. So maybe some of my ancestors were apes. I don't know. But point being is we don't see that evidence. We see the evidence of design.
Yeah, yeah. So we're going to actually go through some of those specifically. Going to quote a few things of scientific discovery and certain scientific updates, if you like, on the investigation on the detail behind life as we know it, and we're going to look at a very, very macro level, if you like, or micro level, very, very detailed into like the origin, like into cell structures, etc. So we're going to look at these different levels of where science has at least made some observations. Now, one of the first things before we start is the very opening gambit that an atheist will say is it starts like Kelly mentioned earlier, that is this Big Bang, and then you've gone over to press them on that. Well, what's the Big Bang? It's some kind of immaterial object, whatever gas, whatever, just happened to be there. And then from that, it exploded somehow. And then from that, we see an evolutionary process over billions of years, and a more billion years you keep chucking at it, somehow it will create life eventually. But that still begs the question, even though that process itself is a bit questionable, of course, because how does it even organize itself in such a smart way if it's just a piece of immaterial whatever, gas or whatever it may be, inanimate object, to when it explodes. One, where does explosion come from, and how does it organize itself? But it still goes even one step further. Where did that start come from? And here's where it gets interesting, because if that very beginning, therefore, the scientists or atheist scientists will say that was the beginning, then you would say, well, where did that come from? And then you get this what we call infinite regression, because then you say, well, whatever that came from was from this, and well, where did that come from? And you'll carry on continually. There's a
Yeah.
very important reason I'm saying this, is
Yeah.
that this infinite regression is actually a scientific phenomena,
Yes.
even in real life. And I'm going to show an example of real life infinity that simply cannot be explained by scientists, because they just do not have an answer to this infinitive concept. We can't scientifically explain why there cannot be a beginning, why there has to be an eternal process for this to work. For that reason, because without it, we can't explain where the very beginning began, because we're still, where did that, it can't just appear. So unless you go down the road, which is I think Richard Dawkins did once, didn't he, on a live show in some place in college or wherever, and he was asked the question, well, where did that come from? He says, well, obviously something came from nothing. And of course, all the crowd laughed. And if you watch this, it was televised and recorded, and the audience were laughing. And so, and John Lennon was there defending the case for Christianity, and said, well, explain to me how something can come from nothing. And of course, he couldn't. And so this is how ridiculous it gets. Yet this incredibly smart person is happy to accept and believe on evidence that something comes from nothing or close to nothing. So that's what he said. Well, when I say nothing, I don't mean actually nothing. I mean it's kind of nothing. Well, if it's kind of nothing, it's kind of like close to. It still begs the question: how can something that of little intelligence, a little complexity, it's just basic, can produce a universe so complex? So you've got the infinitive issue, and then you've got the issue of source behind it. And these are the things that we're going to pull together. So what I'll do is I'll quickly share my slide. Um, we can see what I'm talking about. If I can get them up here. Yeah, here we go. Perfect. So this is where we're talking about where when we look at science, where does it point to? The first one I thought was quite interesting. It's quite. I don't think any of these scientific discoveries have changed in terms of their position. The first being that science was discovered that the universe sort of had a beginning in the sense that it was continually outwardly expanding. So therefore, if it expands more, it would suggest that it had a source if you go backwards in time. Um, so yes, that would suggest the universe had a beginning. And that's fine. We believe as Christians, we don't have a problem with that. The universe did have a beginning, but it's how that beginning took place, isn't it? It's the source of that beginning. Then we see that science says, like Kelly mentioned as well earlier, that the universe is extremely fine tuned. Now, this is where, again, if you take the beginning of a universe to have something that is so incredibly fine tuned, it's talking about here lots of different constants, um, and the probability of it all coming together to create life, to form life that can live in the way it can, is an extremely huge number. The probability is it's so incredibly precise that that just begs and just screams at intelligent design, intelligence behind it, not the opposite. So the evidence is intelligence, not random evolutionary processes that somehow over billions of years has this most incredible level of complexity of the universe at all levels. So, of course, back in the day, scientists were struggling, for those who didn't want to believe in God, to try and explain it away. But what evidence is providing, the more we further we go forward, scientists are becoming more and more amazed that the universe is even far more complex than they first thought. It's just getting more and more complex the more they investigate. So the science is actually becoming more and more a case for God than not, because the complexity and the probability of putting something together this level of complexity to have come from nothing or virtually nothing, or from a non-intelligent source, is becoming less and less likely, and therefore the probability of it coming from a intelligent source is far far greater likely than not. And that's the point that we're trying to make here, is if you're going to put side by side the case for God versus a case for no God, then when we look at the universe is screaming intelligence, it's screaming design and order, not the opposite. It's not all over the place, like Kelly mentioned. We don't have evolutionary transitions, just all randomly all over the place. Because if it was, we'd see that. We'd see the evidence where it works and evidence is where it doesn't work, and we would see all that. But we don't. We see everything very much in order. All the species are very much continually to be those species. You don't see a donkey becoming an ape or whatever. We see species very much the same consistently throughout all the thousands of years that we have recording of life, and that's never changed. We can accept there is some kind of adaptation, if you like, some variance within the species, but it stays within its kind. A dog never becomes a rabbit never becomes a bird, etc., etc. And we have no examples whatsoever of such a change in kind. So there's a great uniformity and consistency with all species, all life that we see, even from a plant life perspective, animal life perspective, and so on. What are your thoughts, Kelly? I'm waffling on.
Well, there's a guy in the chat room. He's welcome. Maybe you need to pin that link so people can know it's pinned um, in the YouTube. Someone said a second ago, you are lying about the claim. The only person making the claim that something came from nothing is the theist. Atheists don't have to make the claim because they are not asserting anything. That's completely wrong. Many atheists make all kinds of claims in
Yeah,
rejection to the Christian faith or the Bible or the origin of life. Many atheists who are all all evolutionists are atheists. They'll make the claim that there was different things that came from nothing. Some would claim, yes, that the universe is somehow eternal, but then how do you explain How do they explain that? Can't.
Mm.
Still got to be something, right? To explain that from a non creationist, a non theist, a non Christian point of view, where we believe in the supernatural and we don't have to explain eternal in that regard. But if you're going to reject God and reject the order, right? So Chase, if you're in the live chat, there, the link is pinned. Or if you can pin that, Ray, the
I'm not
link.
sure how to do it, to
Yeah,
be
just
honest.
just put your mouse over it in YouTube and see little dots, and then it'll show you how to pin it up there so people can see the link pinned. But I'd suggest, Chase, if you want to come up, friendly conversation, share what you believe. Why? How do you believe we got here? How do you believe, the origin of life, creation, Big Bang, what was before the Big Bang, right? Um, so Chase, you're the one in here making the accusations now. So in order for you to validate what you originally said about us lying and what we believe anyway, not that you're a horrible person, but that accusation, then you should be able to come and back it up. Because there are many people who would be under the umbrella of what Ray just shared, um, on that. That's not a secret. There are many atheists who would believe that something came from nothing, boom, big bang. So,
Mm.
you don't have to have a camera. You can just use audio. You can still just click up, like, watch me here. You should be able to see it here in just a second. Watch. I should be able to go poof, and there I am. Look, I'm this magic man with this cool looking Berean perspective logo in the background, and it makes a
Yes.
really cool noise looking kind of thing, right? You don't have to
Mm.
do video. But to what you were saying though, Chase or Ray, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you bring up a lot of good points. Um, you bring up a lot of
So
good
you
points.
we got him now, so
He's
he's
coming
like,
in.
I
All
can.
right, let's bring him up. Go for it.
Oh, that's Hebrews. That's the wrong one. Sorry. That's Darren. Hi, Darren.
You don't look like
Good.
an atheist because with the title Hebrews 9:27.
No, I'm not trying to go. I'm not trying to go in reverse.
Sorry, mate. I'll. All right. Cheers, mate, for listening.
How you doing? Were you the
Sorry.
nice Oh, he took him out? Okay. Well, let's
Yeah, I
see if
was.
Chase wants to come up. Come on up here, Chase.
Yeah, because Restream works slightly different. That they get it on the chat, and they just touch the chat, and that link sends them straight up. So that proved it worked okay. So if
Yeah,
he just clicks on the link in the chat, it will take him straight into the backstage, which will
yeah,
allow us then to bring him on.
yeah.
Just who
And
was
just
this
to be
gonna?
clear, like the person just said, no, you are lying. That is what atheists believe because they are not making that assertion. My friend, whoever you are, I have talked to enough atheists in my lifetime to emphatically tell you what I've shared and even what Ray has shared here, I have heard firsthand. I've seen people who do videos who are atheists make these type of assertions. So maybe you, as the individual, maybe you don't have that view. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah. So Richard Dawkins is one. He was on a live stage, and just to be very precise, um, as much as some atheists will say something came from nothing, a lot of them will say, because they're having to correct that slightly and say, well, when we say nothing, we mean close to. So whether you want to say the argument is either nothing or sort of nothing, close to nothing, because it's very immaterial, that's fine too. But that still begs the question, which is what we're asking: how can something that doesn't have intelligent source behind it able to, if you like, kickstart the universe? So how can
Or
we have
even
the
be
whole?
or even be eternal.
Yes, good point. Yes, because we have that infinite regression issue. So, which is why we believe that whatever that source is must be intelligent, and it also must be eternal. It must be outside of time and space, because otherwise you always have that question of where did that come from? So it's one of those mysteries that by default of logic has to be the case. And the atheism is no different, because they also have the problem that they can't have a beginning. Whatever that beginning is must itself be eternal, must have always existed for them to eliminate the infinite regression issue. So we're still back to square one. The only difference is that eternal beginning, if you like, is without intelligence. What's the more likely of the two?
I mean, and
Just
that's the
doesn't.
thing, like, so you think about I mean, there's, like, this guy Chase, whoever is probably assuming with the name Chase that you are, uh, a male, or we have to define what a man is now. Having a little fun with that one. I'm sure you're a nice person, whoever you are. I've talked to a lot of people who are atheists or don't believe in God over the years. I've talked to a lot of people who are jerks. And just like there's Christians who are jerks and there's Christians who are great. Um, so, I don't have any type of direct judgment upon who you are. I would encourage you to think, though. I'd encourage you to think this through. Like, think
Hmm.
when you look at a computer, like if you're looking at your computer now, or if you're using your iPhone, most likely you're using computer. Um, because most people say, "Well, I can't come on because I have an iPhone, blah blah," or smartphone, whatever. And people when they do that with my channel, I say, "Well, you actually still can. It's just a little bit, a couple of extra 2 steps to figure it out, but it actually works still." But you look at everything in life. Everything in life. You look at a house. You look at a car. You look at your refrigerator. You look at anything at all. Everything around us has design. Everything. The human body, and again, I always make sure I preface this, but this is not known. The human body has a blueprint. It has a certain structure to it. It has a DNA. There's like this software that we're like actually like a machine that's been built and designed, and it's scientific. How did that happen? How are we, of all animals on the earth, mammals, reptiles, whatever out there, how are we, right, the only ones as humans have the thinking capacity to build, to make, to to live out throughout this world, do what we do? How come no other species can do that? How come not a single other animal in this world can have that thinking like we can? Now, yes, we can train dolphins. Yes, we can train chimpanzees. Yes, we can train dogs. But be smart, what I'm saying. None of them have this true capacity that like what we have as humans. Well, there's a reason.
Hmm.
The way we were designed. We have an origin for what we believe. When you look at the evolutionist theory theories and what atheists believe, there's so much complexity of various views and different views, but none of them have any good sufficient answers of why we, not a dog, not cats. Why aren't cats ruling the world, right? Why aren't, you know, the bugs? You look at the bugs. Bugs are like nasty things, right? Look at ants and bees and the millions and billions. And if they really had any kind of brain thinking capacity, we'd be toast. The ants would the rule of the world, the bees, you know what I mean? Like why
Yeah.
us humans? When we look at most animals, of the wild, not like domestic, most animals, if we put a human being versus a lion, who's going to win? The lion's going to win any day. You put a human being versus a wolf with no weapons, the wolf's going to win every single time. Unless we use our thinking to have certain things to protect us and defend us, we'll lose. Why is that? Because we have a different type of mechanism that we've been designed.
And that's something in another episode we're going to look at the whole thing around the morality and where we as humans are so unique, which does again beg the question: why just us? It's phenomenal, the way that we operate as human beings. The fact that we can have this love, we can have this, and what it says in the Bible, it talks about how God created humans in His image. These are the qualities which is representative of the creator, and that's what you would expect. If a creator is going to make life, that's going to appreciate life, then these are the kind of qualities that you would expect. And if there was no creature at all that wasn't like humans, then that would start to beg the question, why? Because animals have a very limited ability to appreciate life. I'm just trying to see if this chat, pardon me, no, yeah, okay. Not sure what the problem is. Um, the way that we are as humans just really sort of points to a real direct connection to the source of the universe, to this creator that we see. Um, when we're looking at some of the other points, which is a point we're going to come to very shortly, is this whole thing about genetic code. Now, there was a recent couple of different things that were recently discovered. The main thing was about this genetic code, this DNA, that just has to be there. If you've got like a basic cell, which if you start with a basic cell, it doesn't have DNA. DNA is a very specific type of cell, and it's those cells that have DNA are the ones that can, from that cell, form life. But it has to come through a certain process, very specific process, because we haven't seen any other examples outside of this process, which we'll come to in a second. But what we're saying is any other type of structure that doesn't have DNA simply cannot develop. It's the DNA code, if you like, that's in that DNA is the if you like the key to life. It has to have this level of code, and this code isn't some basic code. It says here approximately 3 billion genetic letters is the kind of level of code we're talking about, and that's in one cell. I mean, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And could you imagine that just appearing without intelligence behind it? Just appears. I mean, well, it's just phenomenally unlikely. It just doesn't make any logical sense to look at it that way.
It's true. You know, I've talked about this with some people in the past who are into creationism and talking about these kind of things. And every person I've ever talked to who really studied this very well, and some people have, their degrees and different things too. And again, I don't have any degrees in this kind of field. I have degrees in apologetics of Christian stuff. So um, when you think about the origin of life and you're going back from like, the goo to you look at how this all kind of began, and we see apparently different creatures developing over time, amphibians and reptiles and birds and different things. And eventually, somehow in all this process, eventually we get humans, right? Well, everything has to have a process, right? Like there has to be, like they say, millions upon millions upon millions of years for different things to actually function and develop, right? You with me, Ray, so far?
Yeah, yeah.
So in the world we live today, if somebody is born but they don't have blood, can that person exist and live? What do you think, Ray?
No.
No. If somebody is born but they didn't have a heart, they had kidneys, a brain, if you will, let's say hypothetically,
Mm.
blood, but no heart. Can that person live?
No.
Let's keep going. Let's say a person is born, they have a heart, they got blood, but got no brain. Is that person going to be alive?
Probably not.
Probably not. The answer is no. You can do the same thing with liver. You
Mm.
go down this line, and all of these type of things are essential for our life. Essential. How can people who believe in evolution back up the claim that all these things have millions upon millions of years that have to develop, when if you don't even have a brain or a heart or blood or liver, you don't have any life? This is what's called that mutation process, the natural selection, the what's the survival of the fittest, right? Well,
Mm.
when you really think about that concept, that thing is bankrupt. Because if you look and just think logically, folks, use a brain, right? Use the brain that you actually have. Think, if you cannot exist or live without blood, without a brain, without a heart, without a liver, so some of these basic things, how did those things that we would say years ago survive if they didn't have all these functioning parts to exist? You can't.
So I think what you're saying there, Kelly, is like if there was an evolutionary process, then you would see these various different organs and parts appearing and developing into this human. So, but you need all of them. You can't have one
Yes.
and then that whatever comes later, even if it's a
Yeah.
thousand years later, 10,000. It doesn't work that way. You can't have a human without all of it all being at the very beginning, at the very outset.
Yeah, you need all of those type of components for us to have life. And if you
Yeah.
don't, you die. So if we go back and say this is how it all began, we wouldn't be here today, Ray, if that's what it really was.
Mm. And that's a very good point because the Darwinian theory of evolution is all depending on this evolutionary step-by-step process. But of course, what Kelly is saying here is we have, and this is the key to this, we have absolutely no evidence to back up this theory. It's just a theory because in real time, in real life, now that we're using, like I like the way Kelly puts it, logically thinking about this, and what we do know factually, medically about us as humans and other living organisms is you need all those key ingredients at the very beginning of life. You can't develop them and
Yeah.
then the heart comes later on or whatever. It has to be again that again kind of goes against the
Wouldn't
evolutionary
survive.
process completely.
Yeah, now like when we're born,
Yeah.
there's a development. Of course, with the sperm and the male and female and how all that works. And there's this development of this life within the woman, the female, and there's just these stages, but it's all in our DNA, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And if we're, being grown, as a woman would be giving birth to a child, well, we need all those things to exist. If we didn't have those in the beginning, we wouldn't live. If we didn't have other parents even watch over us, even if as an infant, as a child that comes out of a mother's womb, that baby would die. Can't
Mhm.
take care of the child can't take care of itself, right? So all these natural, normal, everyday things that we know as life, logically, there has to be some type of order and design, or we would have never made it billions of years ago.
And you know what the probability if it was just purely a random mutational process? It's 1 times 10 to the trillion power of a trillion. Now, I don't know what that is a number. I'm a maths man. I've lost for that one. That's just such a huge, ridiculous number, in other words, that it's as good as impossible. So we have absolutely no cases where something is just left just as a cell, even if it's a single cell, for example, where it just mutates into evolutionary processes to create life. We have absolutely no examples whatsoever. And scientists are saying is the probability of just leaving it to mutate you for an evolutionary process is this 1 to the 10 to trillion to the trillion. So it really isn't realistic at all. So why are you believing it?
Yeah. Shout out to this guy here in the live chat. Nice guy. I'm assuming, well, I don't know, maybe female, who knows? Most probably, I'm gonna assume a male. But this person just says a second ago, "You're misunderstanding evolution. It's painful to watch." Well, then click the link. Come up and give us your answer, your response, right? You just said this is rather as if you imagine a puddle walking up, waking up one morning and thinking, "This is interesting world I find myself in, an interesting hole I find myself in." So you think water has intelligence? You think water can think and talk, interact, and have a consciousness? That's a that's a new one to me, whoever you are. Um, you know, even like I love animals. I love cats. I love animals in general. Do you think an animal could think like that? Ooh, I just woke up one day. Ooh, like that song from Who? How did I get here? Animals don't do that. Humans do that.
So this whole issue with design is really what we're looking at here. We're looking at an incredibly complex coded organism. And where do we have any examples of anything that sophisticated that doesn't have a designer behind it? So that's really the comparison. It's something with intelligent design to explain something that is incredibly complex versus any case of something very complex that comes without a designer. Just purely some evolutionary process that's with void of any intelligent source behind it. And
Yeah.
so whether you believe in God or not, you've got to just make that comparison. So what is the more logical? So even scientists are saying and accepting that everything we see in life with the level of complexity within the DNA code for every cell absolutely shouts out intelligent design. That's
So
the
I just
most
did a
obvious.
search, just good
Yeah.
old non-Christian, non-theist Google, and I just typed in something simple. Does human DNA have codes? And the answer will surprise the person in live chat. Yes, human DNA actually has codes, genetic codes. And it goes on talking about languages, talks about different things of, A, T, C, different things, recipe, talks about non-codes, talks about double meaning. I mean, like this is to me laughable. Um,
Mm,
again, not trying to be rude. And but people who are like these people in live chat are like this in real life. And there's lots of other people who'd be much ruder and insulting and mocking and whatever. So I don't want to try to be disrespectful to people in live chat. But I find it funny when people make these kind of accusations and
mm,
say we misrepresent or we're not right. And we give the information. We're actually backing up what we're claiming. And then we also give people an opportunity to come up and they don't do it. I always
yeah,
find keyboard warriors, uh,
mm.
very interesting to me, Ray.
It's a very good point. It's sad and disappoints me as well that for those that either you're just wanting to be controversial and you don't really genuinely care for truth to genuinely get the answer to this. And I do think a lot of people I don't know why they're just afraid to admit, put God aside for 1 minute. Why can't they at least admit what is logically staring them in the face? When we're looking at case by case by case, even the scientists now are really, when they're challenged, to agree that what we see is incredibly complex from the very basic cell structure. Nothing but complexity to an incredible level. Like we said, billions of examples of complexity, of levels of complexity that yeah, someone who said there, can you just bring on one person at a time? I don't know the answer to that because I'm fairly new to Restream. I've never brought on more than one in the past. I'll have to double check that. It is
You
a
did
good point.
you did a minute ago. You had someone up a minute ago. You were good.
I did. Yes, sorry. So that's nonsense.
Yep, bring him up. Click it.
So,
I just put in the live chat the person here. I just literally copied and pasted what I just looked up. So
yeah.
if you want to argue with that, go argue with Google.
Oh, here we go. I think we got somebody here. Oh, no, we're not. I don't know. ETM Apologetics. That sounds like.
Now let's bring him up. Let's see what he got to say.
I think that might be down. I'm not sure if it is down. I'll change if it is.
It's Woody.
It's Woody.
Yeah, it's me.
Hey.
Hold on. Doing great. How you guys doing?
The atheists keep telling me they can't come on. They don't. It's just not possible. And then you're clearly proving you can just by clicking on the link,
It
and
must
there
be a
you are.
it must be a God design thing.
So
So
thanks
what?
for joining.
How you doing, Woody?
Yeah, doing great. It's been a while. I've been seeing what you're doing, It's been a while. How's things going on for your ministry?
You talking to me or Ray?
Yep. Kelly Powers.
Okay. I'm doing good. Berean Perspective is doing well and still going, and addressing a lot of the controversial stuff that some people don't want to address. So I get fans of who appreciate me taking a stand, and I get the non-fans who tell me to shut up and stop rocking the boat.
It's wonderful to hear. I love to see that. I
Yeah,
love to see that.
it's good to see you. I know you obviously know Ray. I remember interacting with Woody probably at least a
Mm.
good few years ago. You came on
Oh,
my
really?
yeah, he came on my channel a couple open mic times, and it was really great, and so we've kinda known each other for a little bit, but just more or less talk here and there by Facebook, but yeah.
Cool. So have you been watching the from fairly, or you just joined, or have you been watching earlier, or?
Yeah, I was watching. I was on the road listening until I
Okay, so
could
we're
join.
gonna want your take on this. The main thing we're trying to explain or put as a case is when we look at life and we look at the universe and how complex it is, even at a cellular level with all the DNA code, what do you think does that tell you? Do you think that that's from an intelligent designer, or do you think it just came from some kind of evolutionary process?
I would say
Put you on
I
the
would
spot.
I would say where else would it come from if not intelligent designer? Because if you see an intelligent design, obviously there will be an intelligent designer. When you see an intelligent building, there is an intelligent builder that exists.
Mm,
If you see an intelligent painter, an intelligent car that repairs machines, you know that there is a intelligent repairer that exists with an intelligent mind. So if there is an intelligent creation, what do you think would happen? There will be an intelligent designer out there, an intelligent creator with an intelligent mind. So who that will be? Because if it's Big Bang, do you believe that an immaterial substance can come up with billions and billions of intelligent minds that can be able to create things on Earth? And I spoke to one atheist in evangelism before.
mm.
I asked him, according to your worldview, who do you think
What do you think
come up with this
with this
intelligent design?
design?
And he
And
said,
he said,
I can actually hear
I
back.
can hear that.
So,
So
and he actually said
she
there,
said,
there was there was a like a
there was
big bang
like a big
and so on.
and so
So
on.
I said,
I said,
you think
two things,
a material substance?
pure substance.
Maybe,
Yeah.
is your YouTube open, Woody? Just
No,
check.
I've closed.
Alright. I had myself muted. Maybe while he's talking for a second, Ray, let us both mute ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Go ahead, Woody.
Yeah. So he said it's like a big bang. So I said, do you believe in immaterial substance? Come up with these and all these things. Well, he actually admit that that was actually a good question, and he never thought of that. He said he couldn't answer. I said, well, yeah. Let me make it further. Within this universe that we're living in, within this Earth, is it possible for an immaterial substance without any intelligibility create intelligent things? Let's just say, for example, we eat food or the phones that we're using. Do you think that a phone just appeared by itself, or a physics create this phone, or the food that we ate, something out of nowhere just come up with this food? No, there was an intelligent designer that create those things. What about creation itself? Who'd come up with this intelligent creation? It have to be someone with an intelligent mind. Who do you think that would be? The scripture tells us, Romans chapter 1, verse 19 to 21, tells us creation itself proved the existence of God. And they know it themselves. Why? Because they want to reject that there is a God. Why? Atheism itself is borrowing from the worldview of God. You know what they use? They use morality. They use emotions to say, well, God doesn't exist because all these evils that happen in the world, the sufferings. So obviously, if God is all good, he wouldn't allow these things. Well, how do you know that those things are evil? You see, all they're borrowing from our worldview to try to argue against God. Just like Islam, Muslims, they're borrowing from our worldview. They want to use our Bible to argue against the Bible. That's the same thing with atheists. So I love to hear these discussion, especially atheism and why, to see why atheism is under scrutiny and it's irrational. Yep.
Yeah. So that's a very good point you raised there, Woody. This is why we're saying, like in Romans 1, which we showed earlier, that God is saying, this is the evidence. I'm showing you the evidence that I exist, that I am all powerful. I'm the creator, because you're having evidence of a designer, of a creator, not because if it was that there wasn't a creator or designer, we would not have a universe this incredibly complex. I mean, we still are learning how incredibly complex this universe is, and we're probably still touching the surface. It's probably a billion to the billion times more complex than we could even imagine. But only because we as humans don't have the ability to research it to those levels. But if we did, I mean, if you give us enough time, eventually more and more will be discovered, and that's what we're discovering. And every time we do these discoveries, we find that the universe is even more complex. The humans are more complex, are more incredible. And like what he said, if that was not without a designer, then we would see evidence of chaos and cases where things go completely horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Or we don't see that. We see incredible order, like the scientists have admitted. The scientists that are telling you there's no God are the same scientists that are telling you how incredibly complex the universe is. Everything has to be so precise. The way the moon is, to where the sun is, and the other planets, everything is so precise that if it was just a fraction out, then there wouldn't be life. It's so fine tuned. It's just phenomenal. How can that not convince you? There's not this designer, and I think one of the answers could be this: accountability. That once you admit there is a creator, that creator is then saying, "Okay, if you know that I exist, now you've got to be accountable, but in a good way, because if you are accountable and you do believe in me, I'm going to make it your worthwhile, because by believing in me, I'm going to offer you what I was planning to give you at the beginning, and that's eternal life with me, in union with me, the creator. But because we have fallen, there's that accountability that you have now got to come under God. I don't think the atheists like to do that. They want to have their own life, despite the fact it comes with all the issues, and it's a very limited life. And in some cases, the life is incredibly limited, which is next week we're going to look at morality. This is where it gets really interesting, because if we are just whatever, just, I don't know, inanimate objects floating around in space, why does it matter whether we care about life? Does it matter why we have love for each other? What is that objectively if we're just, whatever? We're not really designed and purposed from a source. We're just whatever. It really just flies on the face of all these features, and what we see of human race is something very special about human race. There's something very special about us, the way that we live, the way we communicate, the way we have these feelings of love and virtues between us. Again, it points to a purpose, a designer given us a purpose in life. And why would that purpose be that it would be just as we see it, where we have all this crime, all this issues through choices of mankind that are, and God does talk about this fall of mankind, but that was never God's purpose. What He's showing us is the absolute potential that He can offer us, and all we need to do is believe in Him. If we do, then what we will see is the answer to all of this. And I don't know whether atheists are just scared to really take that plunge, even when the facts are staring them in the face, when the evidence is clearly staring and in front of them that there is a God, there is a designer, creator behind it all.
Yeah. It's interesting looking at some of the live chat here,
Yeah.
and so a couple people made a couple comments. It's interesting. The one person here said, terrain person said, "Well, if we get it in the Christian Bible, then it's easy to disprove. The teleological argument is fine and all, but why just jump to the Bible? I don't even understand that argument. Easy to disprove. Good luck with that one." Secondly, the teleological. Well, the teleological, I just, again, making sure I'm even knowing, the cosmological, teleological, different ones. According to what I read here, it's a complexity, order, parent, purpose, and universe, point of design, which points about, order. Well, what we're saying here is when you actually look at what's around us, when we look at, structure, when we look at buildings, when we look at cars or different things, there's all design. Somebody designed certain things. We have computers, we have our microphones, we have whatever. How did that happen? Where did this stuff come from? Right? So we used intelligence to put these pieces together, but where did the stuff come from? It just, it had to come from somewhere. Secondly, the issue of the teleological. Well, this is just science. Science is the study of knowledge. What we're saying is science is actually on the Christian side. God's word says, look at the skies, look at the stars. It points to his glory. We read a little while ago, which is biblical. Again, we're just pointing out facts of just creation. The creation itself, just around us, points to something bigger than us. It points to something that just didn't happen by chance. It didn't just all poof out of nowhere. I mean, when you think about life, I mean, the understanding of what's known as abiogenesis is that life mysteriously, some people would even say magically, came from non-living matter. Can't explain that. It's a miracle. Well, if people who would be quote unquote evolutionists or even atheists accept that, then we as Christians or theists, if you will, who believe in a creator, well, we're saying, look, we look to the one who has made all things and gives us this blueprint of what we see in the universe with stars. We look at the planets, we look at the sun, moon, and Earth. We look at how we are and how we are designed with our DNA and our body structure, giving life, procreation, looking at animals, different kinds of animals, different kinds of things, different kinds of plants, different kinds of trees. We see all these different complexities, and it all has order. And so you look at what's around us, what does that show? It shows design. Well, then the question is, who designed us? How did we get here, right? Like good old song from who? How did we get here, right? Well, maybe it isn't the creator God of the Bible, but you still have to somehow step out of your bubble, step out of what you've been taught to believe in schools, and ask the question, well, how did we get here? What is the cause? And maybe it is UFOs. Maybe there are aliens out there. Who knows? We look at what's going on in the States lately. Aliens exist. It's been hidden, covered, whatever, right? But something was our source, right? Now, being serious, that was kind of a joke, but still being serious, we have to think rational here. Christianity and looking at creationism is rational. It's a rational thought. It's not just this thought, "Ooh, I'm a Christian, automatically it's God." No, we see people talk about God, but then we look at the vast world around us in the universe, and it points to what? It points to design.
So, guys, I saw a little something in the chat which I thought was interesting. If anyone wants to attempt to answer it, the guy, I think it was 500 Migo, said that when you look at design, he apparently he's wearing glasses like me. He said, "Well, it looks like God made a bad job at designing our eyes because it seems like we're struggling and failing in being able to see well." How would you answer that?
I forgot about that one too. I'll let Woody share it, but I also forgot about that too. Like, we look at glasses. Glasses were still made. Well, what about someone who doesn't wear glasses? How do they see? How'd they get eyeballs? How do those eyeballs evolve over billions and billions of years? Like, this makes no sense. So the argument of, say, like someone who does wear glasses or doesn't wear glasses, looking at creation. Well, there's a lot of things in life that we have sicknesses, we have disease. That doesn't negate still a creator. It still doesn't take away the fact of a source, doesn't take away the fact of some kind of intelligent design. Just because we have these flaws, right? And now this would be a biblical response. We see the reason because man is fallen and disease is coming to this world and we have sickness, sadly. But still, even in all of that, with what we have of these things that we have to deal with life and death and disease, we still can look still around us and still see design. You want to add to that, Woody?
Yep. As you already point to, God's design is not for us to be sick or sufferers. It all happens because of sin. The Bible gives us all the answers, in which my atheist friend doesn't have an answer for. If I ask him, well, let's just say for the sake of argument that, well, since Ray have a glasses, that means God doesn't exist. So I would say this: how did Ray get his glasses? Or where does suffering comes from? Where does evil comes from? Based on their worldview, okay? Because God's design, just like Frank Turek says, God made it, human broke it, Jesus fixed it. Meaning that God designed us in a way to have a relationship with Him, that He loves us so much, He gave us a free will. But humans, because of their free will, broke God's commandment. That's where suffering comes. That's where suffering comes in. That's where death comes in, and that's where now humans are broken and separated from God. And Jesus comes to restore the problem of evil. Okay, so based on this argument that they laid out, the Bible already gave us the answer about why we're here, or even why do we die. Like my friend here, I would ask him, why do we die? What is the purpose and the point of us living? So even if you want to negate about suffering, well, Brother Ray have his glasses, that means that negates the intelligent designer. I don't know what you're talking about, because only if you can show from the scripture that those things can never happen to us. Jesus even promised that those things, sufferings, happens to Christians. And that's how even all of us suffer because of sin. We sin before God.
Hmm. You're on mute, Kelly.
Oh, sorry. One quick comment here. So these guys seem to be doubling down in the live chat. It's kind of funny. So this one person says, "Oh, Lord, I really like the glasses example," or he says, "I really like the glass example. It goes with what I think. Seem to be hands-off creator. We have a format, a parent design." Then the next person said, 500 said, "Humans design glasses to fix a flaw in the human body that happens sometimes at birth, sometimes over time. That's not a perfect design, clearly." So you, as a person who obviously, I'll use the word obviously, because maybe I don't know. I'll use the word obviously until shown otherwise. You haven't read the Bible. You don't understand where we're coming from, as what we just shared. When we look at what the Bible teaches, who is the source of all creation, God, intelligent design, when things were designed in the beginning, they were without flaw. That's what we see historically. Because of man's rebellion, just like atheists today who rebel against God, just back in those days, those who rebelled and disobeyed God, sin and sickness and death then entered into this world. Okay? So from that, we then would see these flaws, these imperfections, these different things, but not with everybody. Like not everybody gets, dies of cancer. Not everybody has AIDS. Not everybody has diabetes. Not everybody has all these different whatever diseases. Not everybody has a flaw with their eyes. Not everybody, but some people are born a certain way with imperfections or flaws or diseases, sadly. But still think, guys, think. Use that noggin up there. There's still order and design in even what we look at, even with within these flaws, right? So to go against what we'd say is the obvious, you guys know deep down, you don't want to admit it, you don't want to acknowledge it, but you know deep down that we're not here by chance. You know something had to happen supernaturally. Something. You don't know what, but you have faith that somehow we happened, but you don't know why. But you still have faith that there's order and there's history, but you don't know in who. Well, we have the answer as Christians, not just even from a scientific point of view of design and order, but we have the answer that it comes from the Word of God, the Bible, Old and New Testament. this revelation. And these are things that have been historically demonstrated and proved. But you, the listener, you have to make a decision. There's a good book, and you guys probably have great references as well. Do I have it here? Actually, I do. How about that? I didn't plan this. See if I can make sure I see myself here. So
Yeah.
this book here, I don't know if it's still in existence. It's called Creation by Design. It's a little book, not very big. The guy here is a former evolutionist professor, who was convinced after examining the evidence, scientific evidence. He was an advocate for evolution. He was a professor in colleges. And after examining the actual evidence of design, he later realized evolution is not true. There is evidence for design, right? That's one source. It's a neat little, it's a small little booklet. When I do talking to people in the streets, I hand these things out and talk to people. I would encourage you, check it out. And one more, didn't plan it as well. It just happened to be in front of my computer right here. One more for fun. More Than a Carpenter. If you really want to know the truth about Christianity and the history of the Bible and who Jesus Christ is, More Than a Carpenter. If you're willing to check it out, that's up to you. I share those things for those who might be willing.
Thanks, Kelly. So we've actually got two very separate arguments, and I think the guy in the chat is inflating the two. Whether or not we've got an issue with things of gone wrong, if you like, down the road, the Bible does explain it, but that doesn't take away or negate the fact that there was a designer. So you need to kind of separate those and say, okay, at least I'm convinced there must be an intelligent designer behind the universe, because that's what all science points to, what we see in reality points to, based on what is now known as pretty factual in terms of how complex the universe is and how complex we are and so on. Then we have to look at, there's something in the chat I'll address in a second there, quite a hilarious point about Mormonism, is then we have to look at, well, what's happened? Don't forget what's in the Bible was something that was written thousands of years ago already, giving us an explanation about how man had a choice and made the wrong choices very early on. And that's how sin entered the world, through those wrong choices, because God gave us a free will. And you can't argue that wasn't a good decision, because I'm sure every one of us likes to have a free will to choose in terms of how we lead our lives and what we do in our lives. We don't want to be robots. We don't want to be conditioned and forced to live a certain life. We want to have those choices, and we cherish that. But at the same time, we can make wrong choices. People do, because of free will. And unfortunately, this happened very early on. And as it says in Romans, that through that sin entered the world. And that's the explanation. Through that sin, we see where that creates the issues in terms of disease, in terms of deaths and things not going right, and so on and so on. Not because the Creator designed it that way, because of man's own choices. But as I say, that's a separate point, a separate discussion, which we will cover in future weeks, in terms of the morality for the case for God, in terms of what we call the Christian God, why the Christian God is the explanation of that intelligent source compared to anything else. Which leads me on to this Mormon question. I don't know if Kelly, if you want to answer this, because you know more about Mormonism than I do. Basically trying to say that Mormonism is the answer. I don't know, have I read that right?
Where's
That he
that?
says,
Where's that comment
yeah.
at? How far back up?
Oh
What
no,
time stamp?
before,
It's around
fairly recent.
after, before your comment, was it Creation by Design, Dr.
Yeah,
Mark?
the one, yeah,
Oh, let me
just
just
before
see
yours,
here.
Kelly.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So we have the answers said every religious person out there. Tons of people are still Mormon, and we can disprove that to a high degree as well. Easy for people to hang on to a failed religion. Yeah, that's a weird statement. It is true. A lot of people will make the claim they have an answer. It's true. Jehovah's Witnesses make a claim. Islam will make the claim. Mormons will make the claim. There's other groups I know, Seventh-day Adventists, Roman Catholics will make the claim. Evolutionists will make the claim. Everybody makes a claim. This is true. And how does anyone disprove anything, right? You say it's easy. We can disprove that to a high degree as well. Okay, so how do you disprove intelligent design? How do you do that? You have theories, you have speculations, and all of you are a mixed bag when it comes to the billions of years, the goo from you, to monkeys, to amphibians, et cetera, right? It's all theories. So you can't disprove design. Design is fact. We have code, we have DNA. You have to be able to disprove that. The thing about Mormonism, interesting comment. Well, Mormonism is a different religion. They claim to be Christian. They came in the 18th century. Joseph Smith, he had many additional sources and citations and things that he taught that went completely contrary to the Bible. How would I examine that? I examine his teachings based on what the Bible teaches. Same thing would be with Islam or any other group, right? So the fact that you're making this statement here is failed religion. We're not even really trying to necessarily prove, at least I don't think so. We're not here emphatically claiming Christianity, even though we would all agree on this panel that Christianity is true. Okay. But what we're talking about primarily is how did we get here? What caused our existence? Why are we here? Is there a purpose and meaning to life? If you go the evolutionist route, there is no purpose, there is no meaning. A human being is just as important as a human fly. The fly is just as human importance as a human being, according to evolution, right? Why are we here? How did we get here? Evolution can't give those answers. All they got is speculation. But within the framework now of, say, a Christian point of view or perspective, we have answers. We have reasons. We have people. It would point back again to Jesus Christ. I mean, we wouldn't be even talking to anybody today if it wasn't for Jesus Christ. Some people will say, well, he never existed. That's nice. That's a nice fairy tale to believe that. Even non-Christian historians, many scholars and archaeologists will point to the reality that Jesus really lived, and even to the fact that the evidence is overwhelming that he was historically crucified on a cross and died. Now, people want to debate whether or not the evidence of the resurrection is true or not, but nobody really in a real brain, common sense, having some type of intelligence would argue the existence of Jesus or he was actually crucified. You have to ask the question, why was he crucified? What was the purpose? What did he do? What do we see historically? What did he claim? Why did he come? Well, it points again to what the scriptures teach. He was our savior. He came to set us free from sin in this world, right? Then you look at the issue of the resurrection. Okay, lots of people have theories. It was the swoon theories, a hallucination theory, all these whatever, or he didn't really exist. Bottom line is, even the Jewish people early on, not even just Christians, Jewish people understood that he actually was resurrected in the Jewish writings in what's called the Talmud. The Jewish people actually said that he was resurrected, but according to what's called necromancy, they would claim some type of spiritualism, but they still acknowledge what the Christians claimed. And for 2,000 years, you know what we have? We have 2,000 years of undisputed evidence that not only was he crucified and resurrected, but there's an empty tomb. And for 2,000 years, there's been no dead body and no substantial evidence to refute the claims of Christianity. So why do I share all that? Well, 'cause I'm a Christian. And the fact of what the Bible teaches about creation. Jesus taught about God, creation, mankind. We have a history here. We have within our backing as Christians, science and history on our side. Evolutionists or atheists do not.
Great answer. And just, Cameron, you gave some point about you somehow believe I can't quite believe this, despite everything being said so far. He thinks that the evolutionary process is the most intellectual process to me. So I don't know what's going on there. So let's go back to Darwin. Darwin was the evolutionary theory that he put together. This was based on which was a known fact now, very clear that he didn't have a lot of knowledge about how complex things were, especially molecules and cells. He didn't know at that time just how complex it is. So he's basically based it on what we call macro evolution that basically works without a designer. Um, and the steps and probability of an unintelligent design to be forming through mutations of an evolutionary process, if we set at the very beginning, go back at the beginning and watch, and this is not us just making this up, is 1 to the trillion to the trillion. The probability is incredibly unlikely, to the point where it's as good as impossible. So you could go with that theory, but why would you go in a theory that is so unlikely compared to an intelligent design that is far more likely, because everything points to intelligent design. Everything we know that has process that is intellectual comes from a design. So why not the universe? Why not life as we see it? The only difference is we haven't pinned down who that designer is necessarily. We as Christians believe we have pinned down who that designer is. But that aside, as a non-believer, at least as an atheist, believe that a designer is more likely, the probability for those reasons, now that we know what we know about science and what we know about life and molecular structures. We've never seen a single life form creating into a two-cell life form or three-cell form. It has to be a multi-layered cell structure to create life, not just single cell. That is a level of huge dependency. We have nothing where we have any examples of any kind of evolutionary mutational process where we see every single step from a mutation of one life form to another. Not one example exists. Not one. So what do we see? Uniformity, consistency for a process that clearly shows intellectual design behind it. So I don't know where you're getting your points about Darwin's theories, because he himself did not realize what he was saying, because he didn't have the knowledge of how complex life was. And that's really, uh,
Can I share that?
yeah, please do.
This is a fun clip. I remember watching this a while back, which is what was the original with intelligent design with Ben Stein, and you just got. Can you share it in the screen so we can see it?
Yeah, sure. Where did you put it? Is in
I just clicked share. I don't know where it's at.
uh,
Do you know how to share over there?
yeah, I did give you rights to share. Double check that I did give everybody rights to share. Whoops.
Should be like I think just what you do is I think you just hit accept or something like that on your end. I know that's how it is
Yeah,
with StreamYard.
yeah, you're right. I just did see that come up.
I'll do it one more time. Let's see here. We'll try it one more time. All right, here we go.
Yeah,
All right, see what happens.
yeah.
There you go.
That's
There you
what
go.
it appears and it disappears in seconds. I got really about 3 seconds to say yes. There you go.
So this is a while back with Richard Dawkins, and he's having a conversation with Ben Stein, and it's talking about how back he was doing this like documentary, which was really great. Talking to people who are professors and teachers and different people in colleges, places, whatever. And this is a part of the clip. I just did a quick search, only 2 minutes. I'm assuming it's the clip I'm thinking, so hopefully it's the right one. But he's talking about here that Richard Dawkins actually goes out on a limb and even says, even though he's so bent to not want to believe in the God of the Bible creation, he goes on to say that possibly, though, aliens could have been intelligent and designed us. Let's see if I'm right. I think this is the clip. Let's listen.
Who did create the heavens and the earth?
Why do you use the word who? You see, you immediately beg the question by using the word who.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
And what was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right, and how did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto, perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
You might actually find details of an actual designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. But that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
So that's very
Wow.
curious.
Isn't it? Brilliant clip. I've never seen that.
Yeah, I think it's called Expelled. I think the actual documentary, look it up. I'm pretty sure it's free on YouTube to check out. And it was excellent because Ben Stein is Jewish. He's not Christian. But he goes around and this is part of it. He's talking to many other people who are professors and even people who were not Christians, but they were in colleges in this documentary when you see it. And these professors who were teaching evolution, they also were teaching with evidence that pointed to some type of intelligent design, but it wasn't God. They didn't say God or the Bible, just the fact that it pointed to something outside of us just happening by the Big Bang or chance. And these people actually got fired from the colleges just because they were hinting that there could be intelligent design. Isn't that crazy?
It is. What I found quite amusing was all he was really doing was just pushing the same argument back a step, back a level. So so he's saying at this point in time, with the life and the universe that we know, we're not agreeing there's an intelligent design behind it, but there's a previous universe or whatever, that again had that same mutational evolutionary process, but that itself did have a designer. So
And gave
if
us
that
the impression that if they were the ones who somehow evolved to this superior type of status, gave us
yeah,
the impression the world we live in that we actually have order in design.
yes. So
Interesting.
that species had to be so super intelligent so they had the capability of creating the universe that we know.
Yeah.
That
And
sounds a
that's
bit like
coming
God to
from
me.
a guy who's very anti-Christian and very anti-Bible.
Wow.
Yeah.
But just looking at it fundamentally in terms of the facts in front of him. And I like that that's the first time I've heard Richard Dawkins agree that the concept of intelligent design, and in fact, there was what was it, a signature, he said? Oh, wow. That's so close, isn't it? So close to agreeing that why can't we have an intelligent design behind what we know as life, which we call God? I don't know what this aversion to just wanting to admit what's really in front of them, but that was interesting. I don't know what their chap said anything to that. Only
If
to
I
say
can,
that
if I can share it here real quick, let me just share one more time.
sure,
I found the actual, it looks like the full version. So I'll
okay,
put it up here. If you just do that, just pop it up real quick.
yeah,
So this is it here. So if you just do a quick search in YouTube, type expelled, no intelligence allowed. I'll just play it for a minute here, kind of give you the introduction.
gentlemen.
You question the powers that be. What was Dr. Sternberg's crime? He dared to publish an article by Dr. Stephen Meyer, one of the leading lights of the intelligent design movement. The paper ignited a firestorm of controversy merely because it suggested intelligent design might be able to explain how life began. As a result, Dr. Sternberg lost his office, his political and religious beliefs were investigated, and he was pressured to resign.
The questioning of Darwinism was a bridge too far for many. The mentioning of intelligent design that occurs at the end of the paper was over the top. And I think the intelligent design proponents have raised a number of very important questions.
And you wanted to get those questions brought up and discussed.
Placed on the table.
Placed on the table.
People were so upset about it. They were so upset that you could see they had a physical, emotional reaction.
Wow.
They were saying that Stephen...
So I'll stop it there. So go check out, go check this out. Anybody out there, you guys listening, go check out Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. This is looks like the full version. Even if you don't even believe, it's still worth watching. It's a very excellent documentary. It's excellent.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
How much longer are you hoping to go, Ray? Just out of curiosity, we didn't talk about that when we first started.
No, I didn't really have a time limit. It was really just to cover this particular subject matter. We've got 2 other different subject matters, which I think will be on another occasion. So we're pretty much at a point now. I think we can just wrap up with, I guess, a little quick summary. Woody, if you wanted to put your overview, you're more than welcome before we wrap up. Just if you like.
Well, not really much to say. We're just saying that it was a great, wonderful discussion based on atheism, examining the worldview of atheism, and how do we fit it with the existence of a God, especially with the narrative of the Word of God, and by using the Bible to distinguish, well, if God exists, who is this God, and so on. And then we went to the evidence of the resurrection of Christ. As Paul says, if any atheist watching, just like Lee Strobel did that investigation,
Yep.
if Jesus Christ did not rise from the dead, Christianity is all a lie, as Paul says.
Yep.
Because if Christ was not raised, our faith is useless. So put it to the test and see whether or not Jesus Christ raised based on historical evidence. And from there we can judge by whether or not Jesus is the true or is Christianity is false. All right, God bless. And I will say the gospel is Jesus Christ came to set us free, redeem us from sin, and we can never stray away from the gospel of Christ.
Cool. Thanks, Woody. Closing thoughts, Kelly?
No, it's really nice seeing Woody, and I haven't chatted with him for a while. One thing, Woody, you have a great smile, man. Every time you smile, I go, man, I want to be 20 again. You got that great young youth, and just keep on preaching the gospel and sharing. And maybe somewhere down the road, if you got some time to join on also one of my live streams again, that'd be cool to have you over there.
Amen. Praise the Lord. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Amen. Thank you, Ray, for having me on as well. I think I will take off here in just a minute so you can do your final thoughts. But thank you, Ray. And then I do have this Wednesday. I'm going to schedule it a little bit later for you to join. We're going to talk about Jehovah's Witnesses and the Trinity. So I'll send you that link a little bit later. All right.
Thank
All right,
you so
guys.
much.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Lord
Take
bless
care.
you guys. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Take you later. Bye-bye. Bye. So there we are. This is one episode in 3. We're going to cover in 2 more episodes. One will be on morality. We will look at the case for God from a moral perspective and why we believe that intelligent design is the God that we know of, the Bible, which we believe the Christian faith represents more accurately what that belief is, and we'll provide the evidence for that. And then also, lastly, we will combine that as a separate, because it is a big topic on its own, to then what is the key to all of this is in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And we'll explain how that becomes pivotal to explaining why there is a God and why the intelligent design is all about the source of God that we see in Jesus Christ as the answer to explain this all. So that will be in weeks to come. For now, we're going to just close. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope we provided evidence that when you look at the universe, when we look at all that we do know now, with scientists that have now advanced so much into the understanding of life, the universe, that all it's done is concluded that it's even more complex, and the chance of just a pure natural unguided evolutionary process is just too unlikely to make any sense. So why are you believing it? Because if you're going to have faith as an atheist, you're still going to have faith in some belief system, whether it's an evolutionary system or whatever. Why not have that faith in something that's most convincing, where the argument is more compelling? And we have tried to demonstrate here quite clearly that its intelligent design is by far the more logical conclusion to make. The only step that leaves an atheist is whether they want to really be genuine in their hand on their hearts to believe in that intelligent designer, to then take that next step to identify who that designer is. We say it's God, and that's what we would encourage you atheists to consider as an option. Not to say you just believe in it, but let's see where as I say, where the evidence takes us. Because there are a much stronger case for God than what we've outlined so far, and that will come in the coming weeks. So, as I say, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been beneficial and educational. And thanks for joining. Thanks for those who've been watching. A big thanks to Woody and Kelly for joining. It's made this whole stream a lot more enjoyable and more interesting. So thank you for your contributions. I'll just close now. So thank you, everyone. We say that in Father, we thank you for your presence and your introduction to life and the way that you yourself has put life together. And that's what we really value. We thank you for that we have this amazing life. And through Jesus Christ, we do say this in prayer and thanks to our God, our Creator. Amen. So thank you for joining. Till next week, we will, as I say, cover the morality side of things, which I think is going to be very interesting. You atheists, please come along. I know one or two of you in the chat, and you're always welcome. It doesn't matter whether we agree or disagree. I think as long as we can have a healthy discussion, that is what is important. And of course, you're welcome to join. You click on the link. We'll provide the link each time. We've just proven that it does work. One or two colleagues here did try it, and that worked fine. So just click on the link, and we will bring you on so that you can discuss and challenge us. Not a problem at all. We'd be more than happy for you to do so, and we really do encourage that type of discussion. So hopefully next time you can join rather than just be in the chat and make this even more fruitful. Until then, next week, take care for now. Bye-bye.